Okay, this down here. So we're going to be talking about cataloging for audiovisual materials today. And part of this has to do with the fact that different formats are cataloged using a somewhat different approach. Mainly, the big difference here is printed material versus recorded material, whether that's a sound recording or a recorded image. And we're going to and we're doing this because most of the training materials and examples out there about MARC formatting are naturally enough focused on what? Books, because that's what we have the most of as libraries and have had for the longest time. It's only fairly recently that in the history of libraries, fairly recently, that we've added these other format materials and have had to evolve methods in MARC formatting to record them. Piece of trivia here, the MARC format is almost older than computers are. It was originally developed for storage, a way to store information and then print it out on actual 3x5 cards to go in the actual card catalog when we still had those. So here's one of the things that has arisen as a way to address different formats in MARC and in computerized search. The GMD, or General Material Designation, you've seen it in the 245 subfield H. That is to say, as part of the title. So you'll see sound recording or video recording there as a heads up in one of the first lines that's displayed that the item is not necessarily a book. This is kind of the older way of doing it, and in the Sage catalog we're keeping that around because patrons like it. But technically it's considered obsolete in the newer cataloging rules. Nope. Hold on a sec. Okay, sorry, sound dropped out for a second there. So as I was saying, one of the newer methods that we're using to record format information is unique to the Sage system, and that is the 999 field. What this does is to display an icon in the patron view, and it tells you, is it a DVD, or is it a Blu-ray, or is it an audiobook on CD, etc., etc. Now, as you may know, there is a list of all of the different values for field 999 on the wiki. And you can, in fact, simply copy and paste from the document I've made into your MARC record if you need to add this information. So then there's, then there's also the RDA material description, and this is in field 336, 337, and 338. Not going to get into talking a lot about how that works right now, but basically this is intended to be a supplement to, and in some libraries it's actually used as a replacement for, the general material designation that appears next to the title. RDA material description is intended to give you a broader range of descriptive vocabulary for stuff like computer files, etc. And it breaks down into the content type, which could be text, could be recorded sound, it could be musical notation for sheet music, et cetera, et cetera. The media, which could be electronic or tech, or it could be printed, or it could be recorded, et cetera, et cetera. And then the carrier, which could be a CD or a tape or a VHS cassette or what have you. And this is explained in somewhat more detail on the wiki. It's not explained in a lot of detail because there's cataloging theory that goes into it, and there is in fact a controlled vocabulary of values that go in the 336, 337, and 338 fields, but these values are basically constant for item type, so that all of the everything that's listed as item type audiobook CD will have the same information in the RDA material description. So you can simply copy and paste, and the information is there for you to do that on the wiki. The real thing you need to watch out for is fixed fields. The fixed fields have a different setup and different values in them for recordings. The top one is for a sound recording, and the bottom one is for a visual recording or a movie. And the examples here are blank. That is to say, in an actual record, you would have, I hope you can see my mouse here as I move it around the screen, but the actual example would have, for instance, the copyright date here, for instance, or it would have, for audiobooks, it should have the letter F in this box to indicate that it's a work of fiction. Or if you have nonfiction audiobooks, there are other values you can put in there. Other things it would have, in the visual one, for instance, the running time would be in this box. And in the tech, there would be a letter code to say whether it's a live action movie or a cartoon, for instance. And the fixed field reference guide, let me go back here. Fixed field reference guide that's on the staff wiki lays all of this out and has the values that you may need to put into the fixed fields if they're not complete when you import the record, or if you're doing original cataloging. So I've actually gone over and revised that last month. So it should have all of the information there that you need, not just for audiobooks and movies, but for regular books as well. Also with some links to OCLC web pages that explain all of this in a little bit greater detail if you want to go deep on that. Let me just pull this up here. Okay, so nobody's typing in questions on the text. Good. Yeah, if you do have a question and you also have a microphone, go ahead and jump in. I should be able to hear you. Okay, so moving along from fixed fields to, okay, here we go. Sorry, I'm getting kind of lost in the publisher numbers and identifiers. And this is because a lot of movies don't have an ISBN on them. In fact, a lot of compact discs don't have an ISBN either. Music publishers especially, but also movie distributors, have their own system. They have a numbering system for their label, basically. And, you know, so this is recorded in the field 028. And the reason for that is because it's structured differently than an ISBN. It's not controlled by the same folks, the Library of Congress, who issue ISBN numbers. So we use field 028 for that information. When you're importing, that field and its contents should already be there in the record. Hang on to that. Don't delete that from a MARC record, because that's the publisher. Oh, hold on. Okay, sorry, my audio's a little wonky here. That information basically is the publisher number. If you needed to order a new copy, you could get a hold of the publisher and give them the number, and they'll send you a new copy. Now, I say these fields take the place of field 020, but in fact, some audiobooks do have a regular ISBN, in which case they'll have both. They'll have a field 028 or a field 024, as the case may be, and then also a field 020. And again, there's a link here. I'm going to go ahead and click on this link quickly to the Library of Congress MARC standards page here that lists all of the different kinds of control numbers you may see. I'm not going to go into all that here in the course of this presentation, except just to point out quickly, this is your source here, loc.gov/MARC. Lists all kinds of information, not just for this, but also even for 100 on through 900 fields in the record. Now, on to the next point, audiobooks. Okay, so audiobooks are actually remarkably similar to print books. Specifically, they ought to have the same subject and genre headings, the same blurb in the 520 field, and they ought to have the same series information. Why? Because it's just a different format. One of them is sound recording, and one of them is printed text, but it's the same work. So if the book is a mystery and it has the genre label mystery fiction, then the audiobook should also be labeled as mystery fiction. And if it's part of, I don't know, Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones, it should be listed in that series and as being the same number in the series, regardless of whether it's a book or an audiobook. The one thing to note here is that the series titles work, the way they work is that the 490 field contains what it says on the cover, the series title listed on the cover, printed on the cover, which sometimes might be different for the audiobook than for the regular book. However, the 800 or the 830 field should be the same for all formats. That way, when patrons are searching by series, it'll give them all the formats that are available for that. And so, yeah, again, use copy-paste in the flat text editor to put this information where it needs to go so that the books and the audiobooks are shown, will have the same subject headings and will be in the same series, so that the same title will be listed as the same number in the series, regardless of whether it's a book or an audiobook. And this is something that I'm working on fixing along with Beth, but I want to put the word out to all of you folks to be on the lookout too, and go ahead and copy and paste this information from one to the other when you need to, and you can help us out that way. Okay, music albums. Music albums tend to get overlooked a little bit because most libraries have smaller collections of recorded music than they do audiobooks. So in the fixed field guides, though, that's on the staff wiki, we have the letter codes that differentiate a recording of music from a recording of someone speaking. Also, there'll be different values in 336, 337, and 338 because RDA logically says recorded music is a different type of content from recorded speech. And again, the information is there on the staff wiki for you to copy and paste from if you need to. Again, remember that when you're importing records, number one, you don't have to add the RDA fields if you're not comfortable with that. And B, number two, a lot of records that you import will have this already in it. So it's there if you need it, though. Now, we're going to talk a little bit here about authorship, and I guess this is going to introduce a little bit of RDA theory here, and I'm just going to read the slide, which says movies are a collaborative art form. Unlike books, they do not have a single creator, and therefore they do not use the 100 field. Now, the reason for that is fairly obvious. Who is the quote-unquote creator of a movie? Is it the director? Is it the actor? Is it the producer who put up the money? Is it the guy who works the camera? The answer is it's all of them. So there's no one person you can point to and say they're the creator of the movie and nobody else is. I mean, I'm talking here about Hollywood movies with a cast and a crew and the little mannequins you see here. So that's why they're cataloged that way. The RDA theory basically is that the 100 field is used when there's a single person who's primarily responsible, as in the case of a novel that has an author. But other types of things that may not have a single author won't use that field. So that right there is one of the major differences in approach between movies and books. Here's an example of how this would work in the record. And we're taking the example here of the movie Casablanca because everyone's seen it. In the top field here, 245, the statement of responsibility, the title and statement of responsibility, you'll have the information that as it appears in the movie credits and also on the container, Warner Brothers Pictures Presents, da, 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 da. And so then these folks who are given in the statement of responsibility will also appear in the 700 fields. They're bolded here, and I've also added the new subfield E. Again, I hope you guys can see my mouse here. And then the subfield E is used to add titles to the different contributors. So for instance, director, author of screenplay, producer, there's a variety of these that can be used. However, because they're a little bit new, they can throw off the catalog a little bit. You're not required to use them, but if you see them, that's what they're for. Then down here in the non-bold, we have some of the actors. And often when you import a record, it will have at least the principal actors listed as contributors. This is very helpful to patrons, and it's almost worth your while to create some of these fields if they're not in there, because people will look for movies that their favorite actors are in. So this is a way for them to do that. Groups as creators. You'll also see the 710 field here for names like Warner Home Video or Acorn Media or all of the various and sundry movie studios and production companies, who are also treated as being contributors or creators. So the 710 field for organizations rather than individuals. Uniform title main entry is something that gets used a lot or should get used a lot for movies because movies may share titles or they may be remakes. One example of this is Ocean's 11. And again, a lot of folks saw the movie with George Clooney and Brad Pitt. I did. The sequel's not so good. However, it was a remake, as some of you may know, of a Rat Pack movie. Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, and Sammy Davis in the original. So by creating a Field 130 and simply using the information as it's listed in IMDb, we distinguish the two. Ocean's 11 parentheses Motion Picture 2001 versus Motion Picture 1960. And this way, the patrons will see what they're getting in the search results, even before they go look in the record and see all of the information there. I, again, like to encourage catalogers to make use of this when it's necessary. And just the date you'll want to use here is the date that the movie came out in theaters, by the way, not the copyright date of the DVD, which may be different. So get this information from IMDb if you need it. Okay, now in addition to these things which have to do with kind of the theory of how and why we describe movies in a different way from books, there's also some special marked fields that appear in AV materials that don't appear in books, and why. So these that we're going to talk about now are considered to be the required basic fields for these media types, meaning that if you don't see them in the record, it's your responsibility to add them, because this is information that the patrons need to know. And you'll be able to find this information if it's not, on the cover or the case of the item itself. Go to WorldCat. I've said this many times, but again, WorldCat is a great source for cataloging information. Even though it doesn't have the mark formatting, it tells you what to put in the different mark fields. So let's take a look at some of these here. For instance, 508 and 511, this is where you can list, 511 is for cast members, 508 is for crew, for instance, producer, director, soundtrack composer. You've seen all of that in different records. And these don't exactly take the place of having 700 fields, but if you can only do one or the other, hypothetically, you can get away with having names from the credits in a 508 and a 511. They won't be as easy to find for patrons, but they will come up in search. And I guess let me just quickly jump into WorldCat and show you where that would be here. And we're going to use the example of Casablanca still. So, for instance, so here's your blurb, you'll see. Here's your, okay, here we go. So, credits. This would be what goes in the 508. This would be what goes in 511. You can simply copy and paste. Down here you've got your subject headings, some of which are in French, and you might not want to use those unless there's a lot of French-speaking people who use your library. Anyway, getting back to where we were, 521, target audience note. This actually gets used for several different things. You might see it used for the Lexile reading level for books. We want to encourage people to use it for movies to record the MPAA rating so patrons know, is this a G-rated movie? Is it PG-13? Is it an R-rated movie? Is it not rated? Is it not rated because it's a nature film? You know, or is it not rated because it's a slasher movie? So yeah, again, this is something really important that we want to have in the record for the benefit of our library patrons is the MPAA movie rating, and field 521 is where it goes. 538, system details note. People will just put DVD in here, and that's good enough. But you can also put in, like, you know, is it 5.1 surround sound? You know, is it a letterbox aspect ratio, any kind of information that might pertain to the movie encoding there. And jumping back to WorldCat, yeah, for instance here in this movie, it points out that it's a dual layer disc. It's one of those two-sided DVDs. That might be an interesting piece of information for your patrons. So that is where it can go, is in field 538. Now, all of these fields here have blank indicators. The indicator is just \, $A. Nothing fancy. A few more I want to point out here. 540, terms governing use and reproduction. This one doesn't always show up, but and when it does, it usually says for private home viewing only. However, you will occasionally see some that say, for instance, you know, for nonprofit use or what have you. If that information appears in the record or on WorldCat or on the packaging, put it in 540. Other librarians might like to know about that for when they do movie night. 546, language note. A lot of DVDs have alternate audio tracks. You go into the menu and you switch it over and it's dubbed in Spanish. Or if it's a foreign movie, it's dubbed in English, or maybe there are subtitles, or maybe you get to choose between subtitles and dub. I prefer subtitles myself. However, this is information that should go in field 546, again, for the benefit of patrons. 586, awards note. This is also found in records for books, but again, you know, if the movie's won an Oscar, you know, if it won the Palme d'Or at Cannes, then that's good information to put in the record, and 586 is the field for recording awards. Remember to include the date that won the award. And again, this is information you can pull in from IMDb or from Wikipedia or wherever you find it. And again, these are all marked fields that use blank indicators. The formatting is \, subfield A, nothing fancy about these fields. Okay, so we're wrapping up here, and I wanted to ask if folks have questions or comments about audiovisual material and how all of this might work. So let me pull down Okay, so if folks want to get on their microphones or type in questions or comments you might have about how all of this works, I will do my best to answer them. Jenny Simpson says, refresh me on dates for media. Okay. Um, Dates for media can get a little bit confusing because you're usually dealing with at least two. And with audiobooks, you're dealing with the copyright date of the original work, i.e. when the book came out, and the publication date of the new format, i.e. when the book was made into an audiobook, which is usually a year or two afterwards. So, Jenny, first of all, you want to look at the fixed fields, and the date of publication for the item in hand goes in date 1, and then the date of original creation or copyright goes in date 2. So for an audiobook, you would have as date 1 the date of publication for the audiobook itself, and date 2 would be the copyright date for the original print book, which should also be recorded further down in the record. You'd have, if you're doing an RDA format, you would have 264/1 with the place, publishing company, and date of the item in hand. And then in 264/4, you'd put in the original copyright date of the book. With movies, you can be a little bit looser on that, and that is because with movies, you may be dealing with 3 dates. There's the date when the movie came out in theaters, the date when the DVD was copyrighted, and or the date when the movie was copyrighted, and then also you might have a republication or a reissue date for the DVD. If it's an older movie, if it's a movie that maybe came out on VHS originally, then you have some different dates to choose from there. And what we try to do in that case is to simply record first of all, record the date of publication of the item in hand in either 260 or 264/1. And then if the packaging or the record indicates an earlier copyright date, then put that in the second 264/4, and a 500 note that says originally released as a motion picture in whatever the year was. And again, this is why I've kept up the WorldCat page in the background here. So you folks are all still looking at the screen. Let's take a look here in WorldCat and see where this would go. Okay, for instance, here's your basic information here. Burbank, California, Warner Home Video, copyright 1999. Now, obviously, this is just for the DVD that came out in 1999. The movie, as it says further down here, is a video disc release of the 1942 motion picture. So there we have two dates. One of them is 1999 when the DVD was published, and that goes in date 1 and in the 264 display field. And then 1942 goes in date 2 of the fixed field and in 264 stroke 4. Again, though, if you're importing from an approved source via Z3950, a lot of this should already be there, especially this information in the fixed fields. So Jenny, does this answer your question? Yes, thanks. Okay, good. Let's see here. Does anybody else have other questions about how all of this works? Okay. Well, since we've got a little extra time here before noon, I'm just going to go ahead and jump over to. Okay, so here's the wiki. Some of you may have been here before. Hopefully, all of you have been here before. If you haven't, cataloging support. We kind of have it broken down here into the different permission levels, but a little bit further down we have contact information. Also then we have stuff you need to know, and I'm going to go ahead and open up a couple of these here. First of all, mark fields for RDA material description. This is field 336, 337, 338. So we have here, for instance, audiobooks and music, DVD or Blu-ray. Now this is kind of important here that DVD and Blu-ray have the same 336, 337, and 338 because they're both video discs as far as RDA is concerned. That's why we have 999 so that people see right away which format it is. Remember that a Blu-ray disc won't play in a regular DVD player. So that's why I would like to encourage you, if you have one of those where it's both a DVD and a Blu-ray in the same case, I'd like to encourage you to use the code for Blu-ray for that. You can play, as far as I know, you can play a regular DVD in a Blu-ray player, but you can't play a Blu-ray in an older DVD player. So it's more important that patrons know there's a Blu-ray disc in the case than that there's also a regular DVD. And also I encourage you to use other fields in the marked record to record this, like for instance 538 or even just 250, and call it a 2-disc DVD plus Blu-ray edition. It's a lot of records. It's not really considered good cataloging, but there's a lot of records in our catalog that are done that way. So hold on a second here. So this is where you'll find the RDA material information here. And remember that that doesn't actually take the place of the GMD, of putting video recording in the 245 field, subfield H, $H, video recording. Because even though that's an older way of doing it, patrons still look for that, so we've decided to keep it around. The other thing to show you here is, oh, no, not that, sorry, 999 ENF values. I'll open that up quickly. And so here you are. These are what create the little icon in the display. We have them here for all kinds of stuff. Music on cassette and CD. Note that there is a different 999 for music than there is for audiobooks, just like there is different values for the 3, 3, 6, 7, and 8. We even have some weird ones down here you may not see very often. Maps, microfilm, government documents. So yeah, so check that out. And finally, here's the new the fixed fields guide that I mentioned we had. So, and let me get this out of the way so you can get a better look at the thing here. Okay, so for instance, books, we have here each the code, sorry, not the code, the value, and then the code that goes in it. So type, we'll have for books, audience, etc. Form, and we're going to scroll right down to the audio-visual stuff here so I can show you. Okay, audio. Type. So we have one code for music, which is letter J. Then we have letter I for spoken word, basically. What else? We have form of item. Form of item should be Q. It's usually when you import a record, it's blank, but you should put Q in there because that records that this is an item on a direct electronic medium, such as a disc or a tape, basically. What else? Jenny, in regard to your question about dates, we have some more information here about how dates are coded in the fixed field. The default code is S, single known date. However, for recorded material, you may also want to use letter code P, which means then that you have date 1 for date of release, and then date 2 is date of recording. Although it says do not use in this format. That's a holdover from the original draft. Okay, here we go. Sorry, T. This is the one you should use. Publication date versus copyright date for audiobooks and for movies that have, you know, one original date and then a second date when they were sort of quote unquote released for the home market. With sound recordings, this is optional, but something you may want to take a look at is that there are different letter codes for instance, biography has a letter code, fiction has a letter code. There's a letter code for language instruction for that's just for the recordings to help you learn Spanish or German or whatever else. So if you use these, then we can sort out all these different types of material more easily in the catalog. So take a look at this. And there's also a link here to the OCLC Bibliographic Formats and Standards page, which is kind of like the LOC mark we were just looking at here, in that it has all kinds of values for marked fields. And it has, in fact, more than you want to know about fixed field codes for every type of media that is out there. What's in the fixed fields reference guide on our wiki is what we expect you to use the most often. So there is more information out there if you're curious, but what's in this document you're looking at here is enough to get you through. And there's some useful stuff in here, like, for instance, letter codes in the comp field of the fixed fields to indicate whether or not it's an audiobook or it is a musical recording. So that's all there for you folks to take a look at in your own time. Again, hopefully when you're importing records from Z3950, or from OCLC if you're a subscriber, this information will already be there. If you find it missing from older records, you can use this to put it in. If in the event that you can't find a record from OCL, that their record doesn't seem to exist for the item in question, then you can look here and find out what you need to know. So unless anybody else has any other questions, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up here and go have lunch, I guess. So are there any other questions from you folks? Anyone? No questions? Well, okay then. I guess we'll go ahead and stop the recording.